Hey, I'm Kimberly with Elixir Mentor. Jacob recently added recruitment services to help companies hire pre-vetted Elixir devs. I help with company outreach, so if you're hiring, I may be reaching out, or you can connect with us anytime at elixirmentor.com.
Secure your Elixir apps with Paraxial.io. From code analysis and bot defense to dependency checks, they've got you covered. Elixir first design with GitHub integration. Elevate your security at Paraxial.io. Testing.
What's up? I'm Jacob Litzo, your Elixir Mentor. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. Mike, energy tech founder and 30-year tech veteran, joins me today to talk about grid infrastructure and the future of dev teams, and I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more than that, but thank you so much for joining me, Mike. If you could just give like a brief introduction of like your background and where you're coming from, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I've been kind of a long and winding path in my career. It's a little over 3 decades in the tech world. I got involved in the kind of the Elixir ecosystem really fairly early on, like kind of pre 1.0 Phoenix types of things. I think a lot of that was a little bit of a reaction to some of the challenges that I'd experienced personally in trying to bring some larger scale apps in the Ruby on Rails space into existence. And back then we were actually trying to build, I think, one of the first demand response applications, which is a grid service where we would you would to change their energy habits. And this was kind of back before like Nest thermostats and two-way connected thermostats were the norm. And so we were trying to connect these thermostats to a Rails app, which Rails does great when you're talking about a kind of stateless connections. When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of things always connected, just the resource management wasn't there. We had an engineer that found this MQTT thing that was built in Erlang, and at that time I didn't know anything about what the Beam had to offer, and it basically just instantly took our scaling problems off the table on that front. It kind of went on the back burner for a while, and one thing led to another, and kind of found Elixir when we were trying to build a platform for doing distribution grid balancing, and I was really worried about trying to select a technology that would allow something to run 24/7 in the face of a lot of problems, and kind of took a flyer on doing that, and remembered a little bit about what we had done with the Beam and was reading about that, and that we started building that project. And honestly, I kind of never looked back, and I brought it into several other companies since then, really all in the grid space. We've done things on the behind the meter, we've done things on the distribution grid, we've done things on the transmission grid, but it's just been such a perfect fit for these types of problems that I kind of haven't looked back. And so that's really, the first half of my career is all about consulting and doing all kinds of different technology stacks. And then the last, 15 or so years has all been about the energy space, and probably the last almost 10 have been, Beam related stuff. So kind of an interesting path, I guess, in some ways.
It's funny that you're all over the place, and then you discover the Beam and Elixir, and you stick to one tech after that.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started doing it, there was no live view, there was none of the stuff that we kind of take for granted now, and it was still, you could still see a glimmer of like, hey, this is why this is going to matter, and it's just gotten better. Every project that we've rolled it out on, and now this is like 5 different companies that we've brought.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm late to the party. I don't think I really discovered Elixir until like 2020, right around there.
That was a really opportune time to get into it. Things were really taking off at that point.
And there was a lot of like live view was already like in a solid spot, I felt like, and like everything was very usable at that time.
Yeah. I made the mistake in the early Elixir projects before we had live view that we connected an Elm front end to Elixir, and Elm is a really cool tech, but it never really kind of evolved and went somewhere. And I think that whole single page app thing just didn't really click with my view. And I'm super glad that we've got the other options now.
Yeah, I'm a back end engineer at heart for sure, but since I've played around with live view, I'm building more full stack projects these days. But I don't think I could do it without an LLM.
And they do a really good job with that. So why not? And that's super key. I think the last the app that we're building for this startup that I'm on, 90% of the UI was built very, very well with an LLM. It just kind of blows me away.
Can we talk about like what got you in like the infrastructure, like grid system space? Like what brought you there?
Yeah, back when I was a consultant. There was a project that I did, just a kind of a domain modeling kind of short-term project, trying to get them kind of look at their back-end system and kind of reorganized how they were thinking about it. And it was probably only a few months worth of work, but the guy that was kind of leading that apparently had a pretty good experience. And a few years later, kind of called me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey, I'm working at this company. It was called Converge at the time. It was a demand response company, and we really need to like build a software organization within this team or within this company. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that actually sounds pretty interesting," but I didn't have any experience in the grid. And so I was like, "Okay, well, I don't really know the domain very well, but I know how to build a software organization." Okay. And so we started that, and it was one of the more challenging domains that I'd ever had to learn, because it grew up through these weird regulatory structures and technical evolutions and all these different weird influencing factors. And it was kind of like this view I had is like maybe the telecoms back in the 90s before they'd really modernized. There was just infinite problems that needed to be solved.
Mm-hmm.
And it also got me kind of excited on that, not just for the technical problems, but because, as a species, we need to learn to use power in a little bit better, more responsible way. And so I kind of started to feel this, this, like you were making a small dent in a really large, important problem. And, that was something relatively new that I hadn't experienced at a lot of the other types of companies or domains that I'd worked in. It was more just a job. And this ended up starting to feel a little bit more like a calling. And so, as I poured myself more and more into learning the domain side of it, it just kind of enabled a lot more in my career and got a lot of opportunities to do, different types of things and, kind of climb that career ladder, for better or for worse, into like, the CTO side of things. And now I kind of specialize in doing, that type of stuff. But I really, really try hard to not be disconnected CTO. I suppose other people can judge how successful I am at that, but that's the part that I really enjoy. That's why the whole Elixir thing is being able to keep a hand in that very tightly and see what's going on with technology and be able to actually deploy it. And Elixir makes it practical to do that.
I was going to ask, do you still get to write code, or are you too busy?
Well, with this startup that I'm doing, I haven't hired any engineers yet. So I've written the entire
nice.
MVP. And that would have never happened with the time commitments of starting a company without LLMs. So that's kind of been shifting the entire.
I feel the same way, because I've been building Kill Switch, which is like a encrypted document storage with a dead man switch. I don't know if you've seen any of my posts.
I have,
but
yes.
I would not have been able to move as quick as I am without the assistance of Claude Code.
Yeah, and it's crazy in that it's also completely upended, like just the idea of how much capital to raise and what the structure should be. Like, that was a fairly well-known quantity just a few years ago. It's like, okay, if we want to build a type of application, we're going to hire these many people, break them up into these teams, and go forward. And now it's like that whole playbook is erased.
now the ability you have as a single person dev team slash I think we're going to see a lot of one man, two man shows that are building like significantly important, well structured powerhouse software platforms now too.
I think you're absolutely right. And for me, a lot of that comes down to this just astonishment of how much noise can be taken out of the system when one person can, if you can get the right person that has domain experience, has technical experience, that has, organizational experience, maybe some testing experience, and there's no more communication between four humans to get all that done. That's the multiplier even on top of the LLM that it's just hard to fathom how well this is actually working in some cases.
Yeah, it's wild. I have a hard time, you see a lot of noise, especially on X, where, you have your love for LLMs and then you have so much hate for it, right? I don't get the hate. If you're using a tool in a responsible manner, it doesn't really produce that much slop. And as long as you know when it is slop, I think you're in a good spot.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think I've experienced the same thing. And as I talked to a bunch of people that are kind of on that entire spectrum, it wasn't a completely consistent thread, but one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of the engineers that would struggle to talk to other humans in some natural way are struggling to talk to the LLMs in a way
interesting
to do that. And so it's this art of communication that if you're a really, really good communicator and really good at organizing your thoughts and expressing your ideas, you tend to see that you can keep these tools on the rails a little bit more. But if you already struggle with that and your team was never able to understand what was going on, then you're probably having that same experience with LLM.
That's wild. I never thought about that. Soft skills, they matter.
They matter almost more now. That's the weird thing, that talking to fewer humans where the soft skills almost matter more. And I don't know that it's 100% true, but I'm feeling a thread there.
I feel like that makes sense, because I've always joked I don't think I'll ever be some framework creator. I'm a decent engineer. I know where my limits are. I can build anything. If I put my mind to it, I can build anything that comes into my mind, right? But I'm not gonna be inventing software, deep level things. Mm-hmm. But I've always joked my superpower, I can communicate between those kind of people and a manager, and non-technical people, I can bridge the gap.
I think that's becoming a more and more valuable skill every single day as our world is just kind of shifting underneath us. That's where the jobs are still going to be. And it's sad in some ways, but it's also it's the reality of what's happening, and we can either fight it or we can try to go with it.
Yeah. I feel I can dig deep. We can have the nerdiest conversation you want to have, or we can have a more macro conversation at a higher level and still understand what's happening at least.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a superpower. Stick with that.
That's all I got, That's why I started a podcast, just to talk to smarter people than me,
That's cool.
Hoping it rubs off,
Well, that's where we all tend to learn, is when we can get together and share these ideas. I know that's where I get most of my inspiration from, is listening to other folks pontificate about things. And even if I don't agree with them, because we were talking before we started, it's totally fine to listen to somebody and go, yeah, that's not for me. I don't agree, but I still learn something.
Disagreement's okay. Just do it civilly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious too. So you were telling me your startup is more based around data center infrastructure now. What does that what's that mean?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the startup that I'm working on now is called Gridvar, and it's basically a company that is trying to attack what we call the interconnection queue problem. And if you think about take for example these hyperscale data centers, it's not just those, but just very, very large loads. When they attempt to connect to the grid, it's not a a random residential place, like turning on the meter and, hey, you got power. It's a process. And there's a lot of times the real power, or like, hey, how many megawatts do you need, is like the first and the simplest question. It's like, oh, it's a 500 megawatt data center. Well, we know we're going to have to do, a substation upgrade or whatever it is in order to make that happen. And then, so somebody writes a big check, they buy land, they start, acquiring TPUs and all this stuff. And then they get deep in the cycle, and the utility contracts with a power systems engineer and says, hey, can you make sure this is going to be okay? And they come back and they say, hey, look, you're going to have these harmonic problems. You have this transient issue. You've got a voltage excursion over here, and like all these other power quality issues. And then the people writing the checks are like, what do you mean? Like it's 500 megawatts. You said you had 500 megawatts. Why can't we connect? And there's millions of dollars that are just locked up, unable to move forward. And so what we're trying to do is build software that can run all of that deep power systems analysis that you usually had to contract with a power systems engineer and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and wait months for that study. We're making it so that a non-technical user can run that same analysis and get all those answers up front, so they can bake that into their interconnection process.
Okay. That's really cool. So you're essentially, are you just like integrating with like physical, like kind of IoT capable, like you're with sensors and meters and whatever it may be? Or how does that work?
A little bit more mathematically based. And so you can, there's different equations of how these AC electrical systems actually behave under different conditions and different contingencies, and load fluctuations and generation fluctuations, and like understanding if there's problems there. And so it's a lot of like deep numerical analysis to run this. And the problem with today's apps that do this, which I was just blown away, I didn't realize this until I got into this startup, is that they're all kind of these desktop apps that these power systems engineers use to like explore things. And they're pretty involved calculations, that they can be. And nobody has taken that into like data center level compute, where it's massively parallelized and broken down. And so now, if a power systems engineer wanted to run like a few hundred scenarios, it might take them like several weeks. Where now
they're doing this all manually, essentially.
Well, manually, some Python scripts and some like
Excel.
And then, but we can run hundreds of thousands of scenarios, within minutes. And so
I wonder if that has to do with processes and the actor model.
There's a little bit of that, exactly. And so the ability to parallelize all these computations, although I got to admit, we are calling out to Rust to do a lot of the low level.
That makes sense, though, just because you're doing a lot of computation, right?
Yeah, I really wanted to use a lot of the NX stuff to do it, but the particular things that we're doing aren't well covered at this moment in time. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. But, for the most part, it's just these like low-level numerical solvers that we're calling out to, and that's fine. It works great. There's not a lot of Rust code there, but what's there runs super fast and works really, really well.
I'm guessing then you're just like integrating with, is it like NIFs with Rust, or how are you doing that?
Yeah. So this is another thing where the LLMs really kind of saved me, because I didn't have a lot of Rust experience, and I certainly didn't have a lot of Rust experience using like Rustler and like things like that to integrate. And that was a little involved to get it work, especially on the deployment side of things. But yeah, it's they are just Rust NIFs, and that actually works fairly well. I've been pretty impressed. Although I got to admit, I'm not a Rust expert, so there might be somebody come in and look at our code base and go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" But it does run fairly performantly.
Okay, nice. I've heard that. So I have no experience writing NIFs or anything, but I've heard that you're kind of forced to manually handle errors and retries, and you can't rely on all the great things of the fault tolerance that we get with Beam, right?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, I think if you architect it correctly, whether you've got a thin, supervisor wrapper around it, it's pretty easy to recover from it. Because I've seen it kernel panic in the Rust NIF and recover
Okay.
appropriately. So, you lose that calculation, but that's no big deal. I mean, we've parallelized thousands of them. So the fact that one of them died is no big deal. But yeah, it's actually been okay. At least the way we have it built, it is the recovery from those kernel panics inside of that has not taken anything else down, and we've been able to keep moving.
That's so fascinating. So like you're just building a fancy calculator essentially.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of those math routines are pretty low down in there. And then there's another layer of the system. It's a bunch of AI stuff for kind of exploring different optimization solutions. Like, hey, should we put a capacitor bank here or a StatCom there or a battery system over here? And like trying to find the minimum configuration of cost and lead time and all these other things in order to solve all the contingencies that you find. And that's a little bit more interesting problem and stays within the Elixir ecosystem more. But yeah, it's kind of another layer to the whole problem set there.
So is there anything like dynamic that you need to feed in that like varies data center to data center other than like power consumption and things like that?
Yeah, if you think like one of the interesting things is it's just like the load profile, like how quickly does something shift? Because that changes a lot of the dynamic nature of how you create different harmonics and stuff. And so, being able to like, and this is something I had to learn, like understanding when an AI data center is doing inference versus when it's doing training, and how those load profiles look completely different and why. And I thought like I had it completely reversed in my mind when I first approached it. I was like, oh, well, inference would just be all over the board, and then the training would be much more consistent. And it's actually the opposite. The training has these weird spikes because when you go through and like have to reload all the GPUs with more data, like the whole thing comes crashing down for like a few seconds and then ramps right back up. And that is like the worst thing in the world you can do to the grid, is to have like this 500 megawatt swing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it scares utilities to no end. And it's why they nix these connections all the time.
Interesting. Like these are like, yeah, you don't realize how many problems exist at this level. Like we just take I take it for granted that things just work, right?
I can't believe, like, for me now, having been in the energy space for almost 15 years, I am stunned when a light comes on and I flip the switch. There's just so much weirdness going on behind the scenes that it's amazing that anything works.
And you always hear like how fragile some of these systems can be, but yet they're still very resilient. And like, I rarely lose power or even like internet connection. So
yeah, and there's some really heroic work being done by some really talented engineers to keep things operating. And there's a lot that goes on. I have a tremendous amount of respect for a lot of the power systems engineers that are sweating out
sure
those details. It's important.
I feel like it's an industry that's been around for so long. Do you find that they're slow on adopting technology?
Yes, utilities, especially utilities, are very slow on all fronts. They're regulated entities. And they're very scared of different new technologies, and that's a little bit of a blanket statement, but you do see that there's different geographies, maybe a little bit more forward thinking than others. But I think it's a pragmatic place to be when you have something as important as the power grid. You don't just decide to go out and
you can't update everything to the latest and greatest because you could break a lot.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm a little bit excited about this project, because I'm not doing like control systems on the grid like we have before. And so it's almost like a breath of fresh air where, hey, I can maybe actually have an error and it won't be the end of the world. There won't be like a major blackout or something like that.
Do you implement LLMs or anything in your analysis with your current project?
We don't. There's some what I would more consider like machine learning type of things going
Okay.
on. Um, but we don't have like an LLM interface today. Although we've been scratching our heads about like, is there a good way to have a conversational, approach to interacting with this? Because this is really a back and forth conversation about where should we buy land or how should we connect, and like this. So it could lend itself to that type of interface, but I'm kind of trying to hold back and get the pure mathematical infrastructure in place. And I think what we may end up having is being able to extract a lot of these core mathematical concepts into a kind of a fleet of agents that can collaborate to find interesting solutions on their own. And so I think that's kind of the direction we'll end up going, maybe in version two. But we need each one of those things to be proven, like how they solve individual little problems before we start turning them loose, trying to collaborate.
Yeah, I didn't have time, but I was supposed to create a sponsor video for Jido, Mike Hostetler's project. He's been making some videos for my YouTube channel, and in exchange, he gets sponsored. And I don't know if you're familiar with that project at all, but
Absolutely familiar. As a matter of fact, I've been doing a little bit of a technology spike on the side, trying to explore that exact idea using Jido. So I
nice.
would be surprised if this comes to bear, if it ends up using that framework.
Yeah, very awesome. Yeah, Mike is doing some awesome things. Here, let me give him a plug since I own that. Let's see, coding Elixir with AI or building AI into your Elixir apps. The Elixir AI Collective Discord is your community for both. And you can find that link at agentjido.xyz/Discord. So join that Discord, guys. It's an awesome group of people all nerding out on LLMs and a bunch of projects all based around it. And I feel like Elixir is just the perfect fit for this stuff.
It is. I couldn't agree more. It's at this point, I can't really imagine what type of technology stack is going to have to come along to displace me and take me down a different path. I'll probably be long dead by the time that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what would have to change because just writing in Elixir is just so enjoyable for me too. And then just having like message passing and processes, and you can just leverage so much and do so much cool stuff in parallel.
Yeah. Well, I think, and my experience has also been that it's just the quality of the code that you get out of LLMs is so much better in the Elixir world. Maybe that's some of that because I know how to correct it a little bit better than with other languages, but it still just seems to be a little more on top of things.
Oh, dang it. It's so I use Restream to do these, and everything in OBS, I can't use keyboard shortcuts for copying and pasting. I have to right click and paste. It's the most annoying thing. But I just shared the link for everyone in the chat to get on the Jido Discord.
Oh, cool.
But but yeah, cool project. And right when you said like, I want a bunch of agents that can all message pass and communicate, I was like, I know a guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll see. I have a pretty strong feeling that it won't get accepted, but there's a talk that I put a proposal in for ElixirConf EU, and it kind of it's about this complexity and like how complexity can be a great thing if it's emergent complexity and kind of that type of thing, and it all kind of builds up to showing a simulation of a grid being of a like a 10,000 point grid being balanced through a bunch of agents just communicating about their state back and forth, and like hitting these, like dropping, kind of like a rock in the water and just seeing the wave go through the grid, and like a voltage disturbance, and then how they all collaborate and bring it back to normal. And it's just fascinating how you can write these really, really simple things that have very simple rules, and you get this beautiful emergent behavior out of it just by the simple collaboration. And so when I was playing with that, I'm like, this is just amazing. And, maybe I can kind of turn this into a talk. So
That would be awesome. And just like the idea behind like distributed nodes and things, and then sorry, excuse me. I've had a freaking cough for a month. I hate it. But the idea behind just how easy it is to message pass and communicate between distributed nodes, or I guess like you would have, I guess you could just spin up agents as well, but you would probably still have a node at each location.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a million ways you could solve that. Yeah, I was playing more like just experimenting with the agent thing, and so it was kind of natural there.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I kind of find it fascinating whenever people do like more like physical. So like before I got fully into the software world, I was involved in manufacturing. I did a lot of like automation and like PLCs
Oh yeah.
and like linear drives, all that stuff. And it's cool to, do the timing and program machinery that works together. And I saw that in a past gig, you did a lot of like controllers with batteries and wind farms and things. And I'm curious, that was all Elixir and everything, right, for controlling that? And did you use nerves?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been a kind of an evolution of my experience in the hardware world, because I was not a hardware guy from like that. I originally like took over a hardware team back in my Converge days, and I had knew nothing about it, and hardware and firmware. And so it's kind of come in and out of my career in a couple different ways. I would say that they're like the big batteries and wind farms, like interfacing with those is a little bit more hands off. The part that has been more interesting though is that when I was at GridPoint, and we actually did bring nerves in, and that was a fascinating thing. Is I was a little bit of a flyer that we took, because I didn't have any personal experience in nerves, but we were re-architecting that entire system in Elixir, and there was a lot of challenges with the hardware and firmware that was being deployed. There was a lot of bugs and other things that were going on, and some things that were just hard to explain. And so I kind of put it out there as like, hey, is there like maybe a way that you guys can start off not even nerves? It's like, can you guys like maybe compile into your stack a way that you can attach this thermostat or controller to one of our like live view channels? And one of the engineers like took it on, and like within like a day, he had compiled in a little library inside of that, and had bidirectional just WebSocket communication down to there. And they were
That's
just
awesome.
like, so they were like super excited about it. And so I kind of used that. I was like, well, we can kind of take this a step further, and this whole nerves thing. And so we brought in a couple of pretty senior, well-known nerves guys into the team to kind of really kind of kick that off. And then we had a couple of the engineers that were not nerves engineers, or more traditional C type of developers on the firmware side, really take it up, and they saw like what the productivity that you could get out of not bit tooling down at almost at the metal. And so watching them kind of get excited about it. And so my whole goal with that was, how can we bring the software and the firmware teams closer, so that they're speaking more closer to the same language, and can maybe even share resources? And really that last piece didn't start to come together until we've actually made a step where we took one of our team leads that was running the back end side, like the software on the Phoenix and Elixir side, and put him over the firmware nerves team. And that was when some really interesting magic happened, because now it wasn't just about like the tools and the technology. It was more about, hey, how do you think about this software from like the deep experience he had in architecting things? And it just completely started to unlock a lot more productivity and quality and throughput. And that was, so we didn't completely change everything over. There were still some devices that were too low power to really run nerves at that time. And I know some changes are happening in the ecosystem now that maybe it would enable that. But I think it was actually turned out to be a really great thing. And if nothing else, I slept better in doing our firmware updates when we had the nerve system in place, because it was just a lot more reliable. When things went bad, it would just kind of auto roll back. And the idea of pushing the button and updating tens of thousands of devices and possibly breaking them and costing your company millions of dollars, it's just too stressful.
That sounds stressful.
Yeah. But yeah, nerves was a great way of getting around that. And so I think that, if I ever did another hardware oriented company or startup, I would seriously consider using nerves again. It was a good.
That's awesome. I have a hardware startup that I don't have. I want someone else to build my idea because I think it's a good idea. But I want to, I think it would be cool to, like, for large properties, at least I have in mind, where it's hard to place cameras and security all over the place. Yeah. I think it'd be really cool to use like a mesh Wi-Fi network, and you lay it out wherever you want, spots that you can monitor, right? And then you can use like AI or some form of it to determine if movement is an animal or a person, and then you can send a swarm of drones with cameras, and you don't have to place cameras all over your property. You can fly them to it, and you can see any spot on your property with a camera.
That's super interesting. We're probably going to need all of that as the world starts to devolve, and just having your own swarm of drones may be a great defense.
I mean, if I end up buying property, which would be my end goal, I will probably have to build this system because I just think it'd be awesome.
That would be a lot of fun. I bet. I know a few people that are really, really good nerves developers. Maybe we should talk offline.
Wait, all right, I'm down for that because I think it would be a fun project, and like that product I would buy. Like, even at a residential level, if you could just have them like come out, and if someone's trying to get in your back door, you can pretty much like get a good facial recognition on them. Boom, and then.
I think you could absolutely sell that to the entire prepper community, like without.
Well, unless they don't trust technology.
Well, you have a very good point there.
Some of those guys want to just stick to strings and bells,
There's something to be said for that too. Technology can't be annoying.
I get it. Well, and like one thing, I think it would have to be a closed system too, because you don't want it to be easily hackable. I wouldn't say it's not going to be hackable anymore, but if it's a closed system, at least it's a little harder.
Yeah, I can see that. That'd be interesting. Yeah, you should do that.
Someday. It's on my list of all my good ideas. What's funny is Kill Switch was an idea I had for probably over 5 years now, and I just started building it over the last few months.
Yeah, I think that's the world we live in now, that a lot of the things that maybe weren't economically viable or just seemed too daunting, or it's just like, well, why not? I've got projects that are just kind of being built out of band because they're just happening in another window over there, and it's like, maybe it's come to fruition, so maybe they won't.
Well, like honestly too, when I first had the idea, it was before Elixir was in my life, and I just didn't know how to fully solve it properly, and then it was just very clear once Elixir was in my life. So
that's cool
too. Yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah, that you have a lot of that going on.
And Oban, or Oban, I always say it differently every time I see it, is a lifesaver.
Yeah, that's definitely been a piece of almost any of the projects. Although I can't remember what it was. It seemed like there was somebody building another alternative to that processing I was just reading about. I don't remember the name of it now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Same kind of thing, like scheduled workers and.
Yeah, but I think its difference was that it was very like declarative in how you configured it. So a la Ash type of things. Okay. So it just had a different kind of DSL to it. I can't remember what the name of it was. So I didn't actually end up playing with it yet.
Well, if anyone listening knows, throw it in the chat, and then we'll give it a shout out. But yeah, I've been Kill Switch is actually, I have two projects now that are using Ash, and I'm a big fan. Like, I feel like it helps me move quickly, and I enjoy it. It took me a long time to pick up the DSL though. Like, it didn't click in my brain until the book came out, and I could just like really stare down examples.
Yes, I have like interesting like background with Ash. So this startup is the first time I'm using Ash and Anger like for real production.
Oh, okay.
Which it's been fantastic. I have, no complaints. But I also remember I remember so many years going to ElixirConf and seeing the Ash table there and be like, I don't want to learn about that. I don't need to know the framework. And it was just out of sheer stupidity and like ignorance that I didn't really understand what it was all about. And I guess in some ways I kind of lucked out that I didn't get involved early on until it like hit this really interesting inflection point just a couple years ago. And that's when, kind of started to get a little more interested in it. And I probably had the battle scars of like seeing several big Phoenix projects kind of plateau out in terms of productivity or even drop off because that layer just got so difficult to deal with that you just don't see that when you go and you like do the initial work with Phoenix and everything works great. And maybe you've got a really tiny team, you can keep that going for a little while longer. But like I had one team that was, 30 engineers working on a platform, and that, you just don't stand a chance of keeping that under control. And I think Ash would probably have made a difference in keeping that coordinated a little bit better.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, where do you think? Like, I think I agree with you. Like, as projects grow, they get hard to maintain, especially if your architecture isn't quite right. But where do you think the biggest problem comes in? Like at your like schema level or like the context, like the CRUD layer? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just easy to let the contexts get a little bit
Bloated.
Yeah, bloated and messy and duplicative. Nobody can keep in their mind what's available and those types of things. And so I think that's where
you start rewriting things, probably a lot of duplicated code doing similar things, and yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Ash definitely helps prevent that.
it does. And nothing's perfect, but I think it is also sometimes it's just about a few percentage points one way or the other will create a massive difference in your trajectory over the course of 2 or 3 years. And I think that's a little bit of my hope, even though honestly I think the team size thing has been taken off the table because I will not ever hire another large team again. Like it's just never. If you can't build it with 3 or 4 people, I'm not sure. Like that's not something I'm interested in anymore.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like with you've gone from managing or working with like large engineering teams, like 20 plus, to now your startup. You're the single engineer currently. What's your, and this is mostly like a question coming from me, because like what do you think like your first hire is going to be? Are you going to step away from development, or what does that look like?
Man, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think it is like to answer the question, I'm going to have to probably just talk about what I think a development organization might look like going forward. And we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'll just kind of flesh it out a little bit. I don't think that the role of a product owner and a developer and a tester, I don't think that those should be or can be independent roles anymore. And so I will be, hiring a really interesting engineer here coming very soon, but that whole thing will be somebody that knows the domain, somebody that knows Elixir inside and out, somebody that can communicate in a really, really adept way, and somebody that has a very strong skeptical testing mentality all in one head. That's a really rare skill. Like, oh, by the way, if anybody's listening and you have that, please reach out to me because we want you. But the days of me hiring somebody that wants to sling code, that's over.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Again.
Yeah, I agree. You're going to just have your dedicated rock stars.
Yeah, and you put them in charge of one like application or one major area, and it's like it's your responsibility to make this happen. Like you've got to have that entrepreneurial experience of like, no, you've got the latitude, like, what's going on, everybody's here to help, but it's also like, figure out how you have to move forward on this.
And then how do you see your role changing? Would you always be slinging code or like working on the next project, or step more into a founder CEO role?
I think what I'm learning about myself is there for a while, I wanted to go down the CEO path, and I think I dodged a bullet in taking a CEO role in this go round, because I kind of wanted to. And I'm just much happier on the tech side. Like that's where I should be. It's where I'm productive. It's where I have something to offer. But I believe, like, I'm going to try to build this company. Like the CEO and I work together a lot, very closely, and we talk a lot about, like, it's all about profit per head count. Like, that's one of the major metrics, is like, how do we create a massively profitable company with very, very few people? And I think that goes back to what I said about the type of people we're going to hire. And it also means that my responsibility, I think, as I can start to hand off major parts of the core application, are going to be about, hey, how do we build the tech infrastructure in place so that we don't have to hire, sales execs and things like that. I mean, you may have like one really high end, like chief revenue officer type of person, but there's a lot of things you can do to make the entire sales pipeline that was always dealt with account executives and, inside sales and all those other roles, like, that shouldn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening, there's a podcast that I listened to, Lenny's podcast, that does a lot of amazing interviews with people that are doing some really cool stuff in scaling companies, especially in the startup. And there was one about this very thing, about how this company, basically replaced 90% of their sales team with a bunch of agents, and they kind of kept their productivity flat. Didn't go better, but it didn't really get worse either. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to figure out how to apply this technology to keep a company's growth manageable. That's what I'm kind of excited about. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is hopefully I can hand off this core product to one or two really talented engineers, and I can start looking at the other parts of the company and how we're going to scale that.
Lenny's podcast is really cool indeed. Daniel Bergholtz jumped in the comments. I'm going to have to write a note down and check that out, because you could do nothing better than to just go and listen to a bunch of the historical ones, because I'm just blown away at what I've learned and some of the people that he's had on there. I'm kind of I feel like you and I are very similar. Like, I always have that idea, I want to be like a CEO role, but like when it comes down to it, I like to build and solve problems. And I don't mean solve business problems, because like I kind of go ADHD and lose focus on what I should be doing with, whatever I can distract. Like, I'm going to implement a new feature. Yeah. But I enjoy writing code and solving like a core issue. Yeah. It's an enjoyable part.
And there's a completion mentality about it. Like, when you push something out and you're like, I got something done. Like, that's a big part of my personality, is just having that a little bit of a dopamine hit of like, done. That cadence is really important. Yeah.
Well, I find the simplest things really cool. Like, the other night, like, when I wrap up my day job, I'll like be listening to audiobooks and just pumping out a feature on Kill Switch. And all I did was integrate a third-party affiliate program, right? But like just a simple like redirect with, a URL parameter in there, and then I set it into a cookie and just watch it work into my like whole registration flow, and automatically apply discounts to my user that just signed up. Like little things like that. I'm just like, that's so cool. It's not even an impressive thing, but
I did it. I think that's where a lot of people get, that's why a lot of people get kind of frustrated with the LLM stuff, because they think it's like, degrading development down to like connecting pipes and whatnot. And I don't agree. Like, I think that for me, I get the reward and the dopamine hit from progress, like solving a problem, not fighting with a problem. And I know that's not everybody thinks about it that way. Like some people truly enjoy the the mental gymnastics of actually having to go through and solve that, and that's great.
Yeah.
Not it's not going to be profitable anymore, but the reality is, like, the people that are all about, like, hey, how do I solve problems, and they get excited about seeing the solution as opposed to fighting with the problem.
Yeah.
It's your time to live.
See, like, look, I'm a developer at heart, and I do love writing code, but I see a lot of people are like, well, if I use an LLM too much, I actually don't have the muscle memory to write a function anymore. Like, I feel like it's slipping. And I agree with that, but I also don't care. It doesn't bother me. I see the end result. I can read the code. I see that it's good. Me writing it or not doesn't make me feel good or bad about myself. It's just makes me feel good because my product's moving along.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I tend to agree with that a little bit more. And I would even actually take it a step further, that I don't think that, at least for me, I don't think my muscle memory has gotten worse. Maybe that's just because I wasn't that great to begin with. But I think there's a lot of times I learned something where it's like I have a mental idea of how it should be solved, and then the LLM goes off and does something. I'm like, oh my God, I would have never thought to do it that way.
What's interesting there too, like with Kill Switch, I'm doing a lot of like it's zero knowledge encryption, and like I know roughly how it works, right?
Right.
But I also used Claude to like make a really like in-depth plan, and reading through that plan like made me level up. Like I understand so much more about how zero knowledge encryption works now because of that.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, and I think it's so important that you brought up that planning process. Like, I always used to hate writing specs because it just felt like it took so long to get the nuance out there that was needed to have a meaningful document, that I just got bored and like, no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
But working with, Claude or something, and describing what I want and having like so much more come back, and challenging me, it's like, this example of what I'm building today in this startup. Like I said, it was a lot of hardcore power systems calculations and things that are like well understood. There's a lot of PhD level papers and stuff out on the web, and I can have it come back with all of that context and push back on me in a way that I'm just blown away. And I can build out a 20 or 30 page spec over the course of a few hours that is so much better than I could have ever written on my own. Hands down, just better, empirically better than I could have ever done.
Yeah, I agree. And my HTML emails look a lot better with Claude doing them, let me tell you.
I bet. Yeah. But no, I think it's great. And then when you look at the quality of what the code comes out, if you take the time to really get a good specification and then turn that specification into, a set of acceptance tests that you're still keeping an eye on, like when you invest that a little bit of time up front, you don't get slop that come out of these things. You get something.
That reminds me, I saw a really interesting X post about how someone is moving forward with interviewing software engineers. And it's less about putting them on the spot writing code. They give them a problem to solve, and they want to see how they solve it using LLMs and the tools at hand. And if they're not good, like, I think it's like very important, like the results that you get out of LLMs is directly correlated to the prompts you put in.
Absolutely.
And I found that really interesting because like a lot of these really good developers that refuse to touch this stuff want to do everything manually, but I think like you have to accept the changes that are happening in our space.
Yeah.
Because we're going to see a lot more of that. Like what you're saying, you want one rock star developer that knows how to do everything. And I like same here. Like if I hire a developer at Kill Switch, I want that rock star. I want to be able to trust him. I want to trust his architectural decisions, his code smellability, and his ability to communicate.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. I agree. I mean, I think it's Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the interview thing because that's one of the things I don't know what an interview should look like today. I mean, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of developers over the past few years, and I think everything about the way I've done in the past is probably wrong now. And
I think everything that I've done a month ago is wrong now. Like ever since I saw that post, it made me rethink because so like I've been doing a little like pre-vetted recruitment stuff on the side where I was
Mhm.
like one, I don't believe in whiteboarding. I don't believe in putting people on the spot with algorithms and sorting, just the stupid I forget the name of it right now, but all the whiteboarding equations, like you can look this crap up. It doesn't matter. You can understand how to do, big O and all that things referencing Google. Like it doesn't matter. But so I would just have conversations with them. I would give people a technical take home assignment depending on the level they're applying at and the job. And then what I do is I look through the code before a call, and I have questions obviously from just looking at their code, and we have a conversation around it because I want to just make sure they understand what they wrote.
Yeah.
And like as far as them using Claude, I don't care. But if I see something that looks overly complicated and complex and I start digging into it and you don't know what it's doing, then I know it doesn't have any right in your code base. And that's my opinion with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think, like, the other thing that I'm trying to figure out is like, how do you like uncover like the blood, sweat, and tears that somebody's gone through to understand how to develop their own workflow with these tools? Because I can tell you, from my own personal experience, just 9 months ago, how backwards and slow and just wrong my way of interacting with this stuff was. And I think that, we're in that time where things are changing quickly enough that if somebody can't explain the hardships and like why they've made decisions about how they're interacting with their tools this way, and it's because of this, and even if it's like no longer relevant, I just want to I feel like I kind of want to understand that path to see, like, have you been living this?
Mm-hmm.
You like spent 8 or 10 hours a day trying to figure out how to make this stuff work, because it doesn't work out of the box today. Like, you have to speak in a certain way. You do have to like have certain guardrails up. And if you don't know how to do those things, maybe a year from now or maybe 5 years from now, that'll just be out of the box for everybody, but it's not the box we have today.
Yeah. I'm like with all this shift and like the superpowers, I feel like it unlocks. Like I think it makes a great engineer like even greater, if that makes sense. I don't if that's even a word.
No.
What is your like ideal team size for like a successful company now? Like what do you think that looks like?
But I really want to say one,
Yeah,
um,
me
even
too.
though I'm not sure that like it is the right answer. But I think what I'm going to try is to have something that's very close to teams of one. Now, they, of course, there's going to be, a lot of support around that. Like we've got a PhD level power systems engineer that we just hired a couple weeks ago, because, you need like when something doesn't make sense, or you have a judgment call to make about how this should actually work, you need somebody that has gone through that level of training and can provide that level of guidance. But that should be a resource that spans across our entire company of engineers. And so I think that if I'm lucky, that we've got like 3 or 4 different core product ideas that all relate together very tightly. So I would imagine that it'll be like 3 or 4 killer engineers that really know how to use these tools and then have an entrepreneurial mindset. They're like, no, I want to own this. I want the success or failure of this application to be on my shoulders. Like those are the people that I think are going to be moving the needle for companies now. And I think if you've got that, I cannot imagine if you have to beat people away with a stick for like opportunities, because I can tell you the company that came in and provided our seed funding invests in companies like this. And I like they're watching and they know, and they're calibrating their expectations around the output that they're seeing from the companies that they're investing in. And that is setting a bar for what the throughput is. And so you just cannot do handcrafted code anymore at that bar. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's either a fortunate or unfortunate truth, right? Depending on your.
Holding judgment. I'm just saying it's what it is. Like good, bad, different. It's what it is.
Yeah. What does customer support look like in the future, do you think?
Man, it's funny. I mean, there's been a lot of work done on trying to automate customer support. And I was just actually listening to somebody talk about this just a few days ago. And I think there's a lot of potential to automate that. But where most people get it wrong is they forget that there is a definite part of that process of learning if you've got it right before you actually allow very much agency on these systems. And I don't know, you've probably done, like my experience has been that 90% of the customer support agents that I interact with are trash. And I'm just trying to figure out how to get out of that cycle and get to a human, because like they don't solve the problem. And anybody that tried to use it could see that within a few minutes. So clearly, who is ever doing a lot of these projects is not eating their own dog food and like going in through those channels and trying to solve real problems. So I don't know what it's going to take to get customer support to actually work on this.
Do you like, this is just a random idea that I have, and it kind of goes into your idea of just knowledge, your experts, in whatever avenue, parts of your company that you have them, right? Your engineers, whatever it may be. Do you think you might just have like a rock star customer support person that could train an in-house LLM for real low level tasks, but then if it escalates high enough, they get that person in real life? Like,
I think it's possible. Come back and talk to me in like a year or two when we've actually launched, and I've probably failed at this a few times, but I've never done the customer support thing. At Gridpoint, we had a huge customer support organization, and it was tough. And we had somebody that came in to try to revamp it. They took it, they took it down to Mexico, and that actually improved some things. And there were some ideas of trying to bring more and more of this, of the automation side of things into it. But man, like, you just also have to remember, and ask yourself, who are your customers and where are they coming from? Mm-hmm. Like at Gridpoint, our customers were like a lot of quick serve restaurants people. So like Chipotle and whatnot. And they're like, hey, if my HVAC is not working and like I'm responsible for the getting through this lunch rush, I'm not going to be patient talking with some random LLM that's asking me basic questions. Like,
that's true.
And so you just have to like understand like where your customers coming from and what are their capabilities, what are their skill sets. So maybe there's some that'll work on, but then there's others where it's just like you're barking up the wrong tree. You just need a person.
I have like very little patience on customer support. It's a problem, but at least I know it's a weakness of mine, right? But I've been thinking about this a lot, and as soon as I can afford it with Kill Switch, like as soon as income is coming through the door, I think my first hire will be some, $20 an hour customer support person to help me like put things in place. But they're the main point of contact for everyone using my app.
Yeah.
And because there is something to be said about a human.
There is. And I think, people don't call into support when things are going well. And so you have to like understand that is definitely a moment where you're going to be losing customers. Like that's the default. When somebody's calling in, like you got to like view that as this is a customer loss and I've got to figure out how to get it back on track. And while I'm a little down on the whole tech side of this, I also have to be very honest and say that I haven't had a great experience with the human side of most tech support either. So maybe the bar is pretty low on that sense. I guess what that means is just build better products so that you don't have to call into tech support. Maybe there's the answer.
That's my goal. But then you always the problem also, QAing your own code, it doesn't work. You can't.
It's hard. It's hard.
Because I learned this the hard way. Well, not the hard way, I guess just living, right? But when I was younger and doing automation and things like that, you'd have these touch screens and, you'd implement everything that you're doing. And this is how you operate this piece of machinery. And the second I let someone else on that thing, they did everything in different order and every way I didn't program the damn thing to work, right? And so things break. And then you're like, okay, so now I have to put safeguards in for all these other things that people think they want to do, or I had to change the UX because something's not clear. And so yeah, you always think you're building solid systems, but you never test them in any other ways than the way you built them from the engineering standpoint.
I think that's really true, but I think one of the things you said in there was maybe even more critical and important, which is about the UX side of things. And I don't view UX as like how something looks. I view it like the part of the UX that matters is how do I reduce the surface area of the application to the essence of what matters to keep somebody moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And, as engineers, we have a tendency to, I don't know,
overcomplicate things.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if? And it's like every time you have an, oh, wouldn't it be cool if? That's not a +1 feature. It's a quadratic, or it's a power function of a solution space or bug space that you've created in this weird combinatoric effect that you can't possibly test. And so, I fight this every day. So that's why I'm kind of saying this out loud of trying to simplify and reduce, and most users want things that just work more than more features.
Right.
And I think we'll do a little bit more service to our community by trying to adhere to that mantra just a little bit more.
Yeah, when I first started building Kill Switch, I had all these grand plans of I wanted very specific use cases for storing crypto wallets and OTP rotating codes for passwords. And I overcomplicated everything. And I ended up stripping it down to just, look, you can create encrypted notes and you can upload any document or file that you want. And that's it. And I stopped. And I think as more people start using it, I'll probably get some good requests that I'll want to add in the future. But I really feel like keeping it simple, I want people to be able to open any app that I build and not need an instruction guide to use it.
I think that's a perfect guiding principle to strive towards, because I think if you can do that, then all those things you're talking about, how people use things incorrectly and put your system in weird state, all that just becomes a decreasing function. And I'm a big believer that nothing stays static. It's either things are either going up or they're going down. And it's all about trying to stay on the right side of that. And it's a million little decisions you make that you wake up one morning and you're either in this death spiral, or you're like, oh, wow, this is something that's actually growing and creating a synergistic effect instead of a avalanche of doom.
Yeah. One of my simplest features, it's literally, hard coded, kind of like an onboarding checklist. And because so many people are like, well, what kinds of documents should I be uploading to Kill Switch? And I was like, okay, I need a drip campaign email or a checklist to track these things. So now all I have is a checklist of okay, you should upload a will, you should upload power of attorney, you should use crypto wallets. And I have all these categories of different things you want to add to Kill Switch. And then I have a drip email system. You get 8 emails over 2 months. So it doesn't annoy people, but it goes into each specific category into detail and then helps you okay, what type of person or relationship should be the beneficiary of this document? And it kind of just guides them through this process. And so by the end, 60 days later, they shouldn't be overwhelmed, but then everything should be set up in Kill Switch for them. And then they should never have to log in again.
Yeah. That's really cool. I like the fact that people are building software that is I never have to log in again. That it just does something for me, and I don't have to think about it because everybody's wanting
Yeah.
calls and like engagement and stuff, and like that's
Yeah.
important for certain types of things. But there's also like stuff out there that's exactly like what you're doing, which is just like,
Yeah.
hey,
My goal is once it's set up, you just make sure things are up to date, maybe yearly, twice a year, whatever it may be, right? And what's crazy is I didn't even think about this. I have an awesome beta tester. He's like, look, I really like the check-in link, but I hate that I have to auth in, and then it's like it was a multi-step thing. And this is why I'm saying like QAing your own shit doesn't work because I didn't realize how annoying it was because you had to auth in and then you had to check in. It was like 2-3 steps you had to take. And
yeah,
now I send an auth link and all it does is say, okay, your dead man switch has been checked in, you're good. And like if you want to go further than that, you can sign into your account, but it only gives you access to check into that single dead man switch.
yeah, that's
So you
pretty
don't
cool.
have to log in. It's just one click and it comes into your texts and then you're done. So yeah,
Simplicity.
my goal is like I don't want to see people logging into my app, you know?
Yeah, that's nice. It's good to hear.
Yeah, because like what you're saying, everyone was like, how do I up engagement? How do I make people addicted to this? Like, no, it's a tool. It's just there. It needs to work when you don't want to think about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm there.
But yeah, I am excited of where LLMs are taking us because I think it opens the door. Like people like me, I don't want to run giant companies. I want to run small. Like I'm a big like I've been talking about this for a while now, but like micro products, and if you're making a few $1,000s off of each product every month, like you can make a pretty good life without a lot of hard work. Like if you just have a couple products with a few thousand users, like you don't need multiple nodes, you don't need a crazy DevOps solution. You just have a product that works.
Yeah, I think that's like an amazing path to having a very sane level of success. And I think there's actually another path opening up as well, which is like building really, really big companies that just don't have a lot of people.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that that's becoming more and more practical. And I know a lot of people will have a visceral negative reaction to that. They're like, well, it's taking jobs away and whatnot. And maybe it is. I don't like. I'm not here to judge that as good or bad. I'm just saying it's now possible.
Yeah.
So when do we get the first unicorn? One person unicorn company like
That'll be
that's
wild. Actually, that's exciting to think about.
it's
And
good.
like as far as jobs go, I think that's BS. I think we're going to just see a lot more creative solutions at a larger quantity. So we're going to see all these awesome products and companies out there by the thousands, and it'll employ the same amount of people. It'll just be more solutions.
Yeah. And I think you can extend that same argument to like just the software development career path. Like it's changed. There's no doubt about it. But we're also on a path where people that could not afford bespoke software can now possibly afford it. And so even though the hourly output equation is a little bit different, the target environment has just gone from here to here in terms of potential people that could use bespoke software. And that's really important to me because I hate most SaaS products for
Hmm.
the very reason that they're just bloated with all kinds of crap that you don't actually need. And they're difficult. You have to end up bending your own company to try to fit into their way of doing things. And it's like, never again. Like,
And
why?
you need a user guide just to get started.
And you need a user guide. All of that I think is being changed. And so if you can be that person that has some, like domain knowledge, whatever it is, pick anything, become an expert in some domain. And if you know how to code, you write
Yeah.
your own ticket.
Yeah, I agree. And well, like most, like I don't touch, like I hate like most CMSs and things like that. Like, why is there so much integration to just track a customer relationship? Like, I don't agree with it. I don't want to solve the problem though either, but I don't use the solutions because they're just bloated and overcomplicated.
I agree. That's so I think that that's a a fun thing. Like if you're somebody that like take the CMS thing, you knew CMSs, like you've been living that world for forever. Like you could make a legitimate business out of going to a bunch of small companies that couldn't afford or didn't want to deal with the CMS and say, hey, look, I can build a bespoke one in a month for you that works how you need it to work. And what's going to happen is that they're going to come back and they're going to ask for more features, and you're going to be able to build a business around that. And that's just leveraging your domain experience with your technical experience, putting it together and becoming some type of an entrepreneur with that.
Yeah, I agree. And let's stop the corporate form 90s apps too. Like,
thank you. Get behind that.
All the old tech that's just overconsumed in large corporations because they just buy software and patch it together.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I remember I remember sitting in a board meeting, my last company, and going through the financials, and the line item for Salesforce came up, and I was just like, really? Like, that is a very, very, we weren't a huge company. It was a very, very high 6-figure number for Salesforce. But they had their hooks in so deep that there was just no way to get out of it.
Yeah, I was going to mention Salesforce when I was talking about products that are just like, they do too much. And then like, it's like that, and like products like SEMrush and things, you just like, this upgrade plan of like, oh, you want our next tool? Here, just, it's just $300 more a month. Like, what? And then every seat you have to add. Like, if you're a company that you need to have everyone on your company using, like, Slack's a good example too. Like, I don't get it. I think Discord works a lot better. And, but so many companies, like, I have Slack up right now because everyone uses it for, companies I have to interact with.
Yeah, I agree. They're not the worst offender out there, but they're definitely on that path.
They can be, depending on team size, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I just saw a post at like multiple, like I want to say it was like a 6-figure, maybe it was a 5-figure bill for Slack, which is wild to me because there's free solutions out there.
There are. Yeah, I could buy that.
But maybe I'm just a cheap software engineer that just wants the open source versions.
Well, yeah, open source discussion about how the economics of open source can or should work is probably a whole nother episode of a podcast.
I have no opinion on it, honestly. I understand both sides of things, and I'm very thankful for a lot of open source projects, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't get the anger behind it when they like try to close off features and like monetize part of their product. Like, they deserve that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of freeloading on the backs of things, and so I don't know how to solve it.
Yeah, there's a big dramatic conversation on X as well around open source and like how they're going to deal with LLM slop entering code base.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it opens the barrier of entry to less, I don't know, developer savvy people, but as long as they can read code well, I think you can still keep your standards in the code base up, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to solve that piece. I think it's been interesting to watch the furor around the whole Tailwind thing, how that's unfolded, and because that's one of it's such a powerful tool set that's been built that so many people use, that I just hate to see them in a position like that.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but I feel like that happens in most popular open source projects. I don't know, it becomes a problem.
It is. Yeah, that's where I don't know how to solve it. Like it doesn't, there's not an obvious balancing act there to get it back on track.
Yeah.
Hopefully comes up with something though, because I know a lot of people depend on things like this, and a lot of people have their careers wrapped up and income wrapped up in making it work. So we got to find some type of solution for it.
Yeah, one of the things, like, it used to be like large corporations put a significant portion of their resources into letting developers contribute to open source.
Mm.
And I think the big fear is they're seeing that dry up because now these big corporations are rolling out their own in-house solutions, and then there goes, sponsorships and open source projects.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder a little bit if some of it isn't healthy as well, because there's so many like little open source projects where it's just like, do you really need a shared project to do that? And it's like you can have, you can actually create bespoke code to solve some of these problems in a few minutes. And so, I think that is another maybe filtering effect where, hey, is this really something that should exist? Like, are you really moving the needle and creating something interesting, or is it just some like random little function?
Yeah, I think, like, I'm a big believer in don't pull random dependencies into projects. Like, I pull them in around security and like currency and financial stuff mostly. But for a lot of it, you can self-roll your own solutions pretty easily.
Yeah, I don't know if you've like, I went back and looked at some of the mixed depths, some Phoenix projects over the years, and it's crazy how much smaller the dependency list is just in this last 6 to 9 months.
Hmm.
Still really complicated, still doing a lot of things, but it's like a tenth the size. And I think a lot of it is that exact thing where, we're just building it. And you can actually point something at a project and go, like, I just need this piece. Can you just give me that piece? And I do that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, same. I do too. Let's see, Pablo, how you created your startup USP? What are your thoughts you went through?
USP.
I'm not sure what USP is. Maybe we missed something. Is that a typo, Pablo? Well, anyways, we'll let him re-answer that, and we'll just continue.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the question was.
Oh, what another thing? Because you raised seed money, right?
So I was super fortunate on this. I did some work with Sidewalk Infrastructure Partners, which is a Google spin out many years ago, and built some relationships there. And one of the principals joined Monta Capital, and they had an idea for this hyperscale like transmission interconnection problem. And so they reached out to me a few months ago and said, "Hey, we've got this idea for a company. We would like to bring in a couple founders to start it, and it comes with a seed check." So I had like the most enviable position that I could ever ask for, of being able to come in as full on founder type of role and not have to go raise seed money. The check was right there, and
Oh,
that was
that's awesome.
a gift.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because, like, I feel like especially these days, like, the climate of raising money is a lot more difficult.
It it is, and come back and we'll talk in a few months when like after we've done our Series A. But I think it's all about like what's happening. Like, are you in an area that actually has tailwind? Because right now there's a ton of companies that are wanting to talk to us about investing in Series A, and wanting to
That's
talk has nothing to do with actually cutting a check, but it's completely different than a lot of the people that I know that are out there trying to raise money, where they're having a hard time even getting meetings.
I mean, I guess that means you're solving a viable solution. That's a good temperature to
I
be.
hope so. I really do. But I mean, it does seem like a real problem. Everybody we talk to that is much more knowledgeable about it than I am, that has been living this, we talk to them and they're like, if what you're showing me is actually real, and I can say that it is because I built it, they're like, this is going to go somewhere. And so that's exactly like it. I think when you're in an environment where capital is a little bit constrained or hard to get at, you it's really have to be focused on being in an area that people want to invest in.
Just
Otherwise,
throw AI in your company description.
It's so funny that you say that. I think it was actually one of Lenny's podcasts just recently. He was talking about that, where there was an investor on that said, it's actually becoming a little bit of a red flag, because they're like, a lot of investors, there's a whole cadre of investors now that are kind of viewing AI companies as like they're all going to go to zero. All these companies, not the core ones that are like building the infrastructure, but you're like, I'm, like AI for this. And it's like, no, you're not.
All the bubble companies that just like, it's the same crap that happened with NFTs and then crypto before that, and
it's
altcoins and all this garbage.
Well, and just a personal example, like when I joined this startup, it was called Voltage AI, and we changed the name so that we didn't have that moniker on there, because it was just, we didn't want to be just pegged as like that type of company. We felt like that was a piece, like we are absolutely going to use AI in a lot of areas to move things forward, but we don't want to be an AI company.
Yeah, I think that's a smart move, because everyone is, what's the word? I think everyone's getting a little tired of hearing about AI. Like the hype train is over. Like I think we're at a point now where we're levering the strengths of AI, but we're sick of hearing about it as like the hype.
That's exactly right. Like just use it for what it actually moves the needle for, and don't make your company about that. I mean, there are a few, if you're, Anthropic or something like that, you're about AI, but that's a capital intensive business to be in the AI infrastructure. That's a whole different, that's not my space. I will never be that.
Yeah. Well, and like, I don't want to knock companies. Like obviously, like there's a lot of awesome tools out there that are leveraging AI to basically remove friction, right? The ability to make your teams smaller. And I think there's a lot of awesome projects out there, whether it's like the marketing space or whatever it may be. Like I don't want to sell them short, but like as long as you're like creating powerful tools that are actually beneficial, I think you're in a good spot. But if you're just throwing AI in your product to get eyeballs and attention, yeah, you're going to zero.
Yep, 100%. I couldn't agree more. That's
USP, unique selling point. See, I'm not in on the lingo. I had no idea.
Those TLAs are hard to keep up with. So what was the question around unique selling?
How you created your startup unique selling point? What are like thoughts you went through?
Well, that's I think going back to what, when I came in, like there was an idea for a company, like, and it was not my original idea. The investment firm had this idea, but it was a little bit different than what it is. And we've gone through a few different iterations of this, and a lot of it came down to, just this is nothing special. Like I feel like almost like I'm just repeating a ridiculous mantra. Like we went out and we talked to developers. We talked to investors in development projects for like data centers and whatnot. We talked to the people that are managing the interconnection queues on the utilities. We, hired like all these companies like Alpha Sites and stuff that give you like access to like hourly discussions with industry experts. We did a bunch of those, and it just becomes clear over time that you hear the same sets of problems. You hear the same worries, you hear the same, frustrations about existing tools. And we just honed closer and closer into the essence of what we were hearing there. And we were lucky that we were around an area where it's like, no, there's massive amount of money being spent on this. People are pissed off. People are, they don't like the way it's working. So clearly we need a solution. And it was just opening your ears and listening to what's really going on out there, and not trying to be too beholden to, because like our initial was to actually have a really strong presence in being able to lease the mobile gear to solve the violations. And the problem with that, it's like, we're going to do it eventually, but it's so capital intensive and there's such a lead time to it that it's not the proper use of VC money to get it off the ground. And that was one of the things that, that we, edited out of our first round of the product. And
It's that MVP. You really gotta skim the feature list.
you do. Although I'll be honest, like we're getting to the point where we're actually able to release features pretty quickly. And like, this is another one of my
It's
mantras.
easy to just add another one and add another one.
But have you noticed that you've been able to get away from the concept of a backlog? And like, we don't have a backlog anymore, because if there's something important to build, we just build it. And it
Yeah.
takes a day or two usually to build it, and maybe a couple days to refine it. And it's like,
What does your backlog look like for bugs, though?
It's deeper than I would like, based on where we're at, because we've had to move pretty quickly. But I don't think it's necessarily bugs. Like, it's more like known problems. Like, hey, we just didn't take that feature to its fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean that in a negative manner. Like, I think it's impossible to write code and have it say it's bug free. I don't think that's a realistic statement,
Never going to happen. No, but I do think that probably you got to keep a closer eye on that, because you can like drive yourself right up to the edge of the cliff pretty quickly without knowing that's with this approach.
Yeah.
But you can also swerve away from that cliff a lot quicker with this approach too.
Agreed.
There's
Also, to like reiterate on your answer a little bit, like the unique selling point, like how do you get an idea for a product? I think it's like the most important thing is you have to be solving a problem. And you have to make sure you're not inventing the problem, because I've seen so many startups try to invent a problem that isn't actually a pain point. And then sometimes they're lucky enough to raise money, but like it's still, whether it's 5 years down the road, they're gonna close their doors.
I agree. And it's an overused term, but I think it's so clear. It's like, don't ever build a company that makes vitamins. You always want to make painkillers. I mean, and it's just like so many companies out there, they're trying to make vitamins. And it's like, yes, people say they want to feel better. People say they want to be healthier. But in reality, everybody that's writing checks is trying to avoid pain. They're trying to avoid embarrassment. They're trying to avoid getting fired. And so if you play off of those, I think you stand a much better chance. And then to maybe just one more thing on that, if you get those painkiller ideas, the other thing is learn how to sell a little bit, and realize that nobody buys on facts. They might choose to not buy your stuff because of a fact, but they will never choose to buy your stuff because you listed a laundry list of facts.
Get them on that emotion,
Exactly. And I think one of the best things that I did in my recent career was I took a couple of years off and I went to film school. Just random weirdness thing. My wife and I both took some time off and went and did that together.
That's fun.
Learn how to tell a story. And stories are the only thing that move people, really move people. And that is something that even if you're not a traditional salesperson, if that's not your role, you're going to have a responsibility to sell an idea or a new technology or whatever it is in your company. And if you don't know how to hit those story beats and to pull on the heartstrings of that person sitting across the table, then you're going to lose an opportunity to do something that may be really powerful just because you tell the story, not because your idea was bad, but you couldn't tell a story that moved people. And if you can learn one trait, I think that will solve so many problems for you in the world, it is learn to be a storyteller. And that'll unlock so many doors.
I think that's great advice. I don't know where my skill set lies there, but it's always something I feel like I have to work on.
I think we all do. Like if we were all great at it, then everybody would be authors and movie makers and whatnot. And it's hard. Like it's just really hard. But you can also always get a little better. You don't have
One thing I'm really good at is asking stupid questions, and I've gotten really good at that. But people seem to enjoy them.
Being comfortable with that is the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah, I agree. Well, like the thing is, I know a lot of really smart people, and I always find it fascinating the vast difference in our backgrounds, like where our expertise lies, and then we all can join and we're kind of doing the same job, you know? Like if I look at all the back end engineers that I'm working with at Collex right now, we have such different backgrounds, but we're all working on the same project together. And it's cool to kind of see skill sets converge like that.
Yeah, that is really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. But all right, I think this was awesome. I think we can kind of wrap this up. We've been talking for an hour and a half, and if you ever want to come back on, please reach out. This was a lot of fun.
I really appreciate it. It was fantastic getting to know you a little bit and getting to talk. Anything I can ever do for you, don't hesitate to reach out.
All right, yeah. Well, and when I start my second podcast, we'll have to fly you out to Utah because it's going to be an in-person one.
I love it. That'd be fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. And I love when the chat is kind of bumping off. I like it. It's more fun including people that are watching the stream. So I enjoy it. But all right, guys, thank you so much. And everyone have a good weekend.
Take care.
Testing.